After a year and a half of waiting, we finally have Hasbro's main retail release for the Ecto-1. How does it stack up to the OG Kenner? And how does it work with those awesome Fright Features figures that are also hitting retail right now? We'll talk about that today on Geek Dad Life. Hey everybody, and welcome to Geek Dad Life. It's your host, Jay Glatfelter here. The end of July has been a very exciting time for Ghostbusters fans who have been patiently waiting for Ghostbusters Afterlife to hit theaters. We finally got the full trailer too from the studio, and then we also got new toy reveals from Hasbro, as well as the promised figures way back in 2020's Toy Fair are finally starting to hit retail shelves at Targets and Walmarts across the country. Now we know that they have been slowly trickling out different retail releases over the past year and a half, but we really haven't had the full onslaught that we expected for the film, and we're finally getting that. And one of the big pieces that I was most excited about was this Ecto-1. The packaging continues the style that we first saw last year with the new Afterlife rivet-style Ghostbusters logo, the caution tape going across the top. We also have the red fin of the Ecto-1 on the bottom, showing that this is the Ecto-1 playset, as well as some nice graphic artwork for the Ecto-1, along with Phoebe in the gunner seat shooting a proton stream. And then if we look on the back, we have an actual picture of the Ecto-1, as well as a kid playing with that Ecto-1, as well as some information squares that kind of show the different action features of this Ecto-1, again, evoking the feel of that classic Kenner Ecto-1. Taking it out of the box, there is some assembly required. Once I saw the sticker sheet, while it definitely is an ode to those old school Kenner toys, I was also dreading having to put them on this car. But the actual assembly was pretty easy, getting all the pieces together and popping them on. That didn't take too much time at all, but oh my gosh, the sticker sheet was a bit of a pain in the neck, especially the white wall tires. I am a father to 2 young boys, so I've done my fair share of sticker application as well as my own 30-plus year collection of toys. But it's still really stressful, and the tires especially were really hard, especially the back tires, because they're covered by half of the rear fender of the car. So they split up, and you kind of have to apply them as, halves of a whole, and you have to kind of just sync it up just right. I messed up on, I guess, the right-hand side of the car, or I guess left-hand side of the car. It didn't turn out too well. I did better on the other side, but still, out of all the stickers, that was the most difficult part. Another thing to note is on the top bar of the Ecto-1, there's green stickers to put over kind of one of the cylindrical tubes or canisters on the side of the top rail piece. And in the directions, it looks like you're supposed to put the stickers one direction, but they don't fit that way. I learned that the hard way. Definitely flip them the other way, where the kind of the little highlight, the light highlight, should go towards the top, and then they'll fit perfectly in the different little sections of that bar piece. Other than that, stickers weren't too bad, as well as the assembly, and once you do all of that, you have an awesome looking Ecto-1. The original Kenner Ecto-1 famously only had room for 3 figures. You had 2 up front, and if you put the gunner seat inside the car, you had a 3rd in the back. So did Hasbro right the wrong of not being able to fit all 4 Ghostbusters in their Ecto-1? Not so much. Same is true here. There's really, truly room for 3 figures to fit comfortably, mainly because of the gunner seat action. When it is sitting inside, like the doors closed with the gunner seat inside, it takes up essentially almost 2 rows of seating in this version of the Ecto-1. So there's only 1 seat up front in the driver's seat. There isn't that second seat up there in the front because the gunner seat takes up that space. And then even though there isn't officially a seat behind the driver's seat, you can comfortably sit a figure in that seat. And that's about it. You can kind of cram the 4th figure in the back, but he's still not going to be very comfortable, as you can see with my Ray figure here. Speaking of that gunner seat, it is one of the 2 main action features of this Ecto-1, and I think generally it works okay. It doesn't have any buttons to pop it out or anything. That you just kind of manually open up the passenger side door on the front, and then you can kind of pull out the gunner seat from the back. Now, I will say, you know, pushing around and playing with it, I'll see how it works with my son playing with it, but it doesn't really lock into place. It kind of flops around a little bit, so just something to be aware of there. I wish they maybe would have engineered that just a little bit better to hold steady when driving the car around and playing with it, because I know kids are going to want to play with this Ecto-1 with the gunner seat out, especially seeing even more footage of it being used in the trailer. But there is a movable neutrino wand with a proton blast that comes out of it. It sits on the top of the car when the gunner seat is inside. You cannot keep that attached to the gunner seat when you have the doors closed. So it sits on the top of the roof rack, and then when you open the gunner seat, you can attach that proton blast to the side of the gunner seat and kind of use it the same way we're seeing it being used in the film. That proton blast is not spring loaded. It just uses kind of friction to push and kind of pop. So I kind of dig that because springs lessen over time, and it still has a pretty impactful pop when you push it from the back end of that proton blast. And the last action feature focuses on that new radio-controlled RTV Ghost Trap. It looked awesome. We finally saw it in action in the second trailer. Had me really excited for its function, even though we've kind of known of its presence for a while now. It is a neat action feature here. In terms of scale, it's actually a smidge longer than the original Kenner Ecto-1 if we go from bumper to bumper. And that means that it really scales well with the original Kenner figures, just like these new Fright Feature figures did with the original Kenner figures. If you watch that video that I did, you can see that the new ones work with all the old vehicles and play sets like the Firehouse, and the same is true for this new Ecto-1. It is scaled relatively the same to that Kenner one, even though the roof is a little bit shorter than the Kenner one. Overall, the length is the same. It's a little shorter in terms of width and a little shorter in terms of height, but you can use your vintage Kenner Real Ghostbusters figures as well as the new Kenner Classics re-release of those figures. But I will note that the gunner seat has a little thing to kind of connect to the proton pack attachment for the new Fright Features figures, and it works fairly well. But with the vintage Real Ghostbuster figures, the proton pack hole doesn't quite snag onto on the vintage ones. And I was kind of hoping the new Kenner Classics, who famously adjusted the way the proton pack attached to the figures, would actually work with this new Ecto-1. Alas, that is not the case. It's actually even less likely to connect to that little proton pack connector piece on the back of the figure than the vintage ones do. Either way, they both don't really work. So in terms of, you know, running around with this new Ecto-1 with a vintage figure in the gunner seat, it's not going to stay put like the new Fright Feature figures will. When looking at it side by side with the vintage Kenner Ecto-1, I think this is a worthy successor to that classic version of the ghost-busting Ectomobile. And even more so, if maybe this isn't your style, Kenner's re-releasing the vintage Ecto-1 anyway. So, you know, you kind of have your choice here of this newer style Ecto-1 or a re-release of that vintage Ecto-1. But I think I prefer this version, even though I don't have the re-release yet in hand, just because it's doing something new while also evoking, you know, what made the original one special to us kids back in the 80s. It looks the part, it has some upgrades, I love the colors, it really pops on a shelf, and for under 30 bucks, I think it is a good value as well. And as such, it definitely gets the Geek Dad Life buy rating. Definitely check out some of my other videos. I have reviewed a whole bunch of the Ghostbusters merchandise that has been hitting retail shelves since last year. So if you want to see when those videos drop, make sure to hit the subscribe button and that bell icon. If you like this video and want me to do more like it, hit that like button. And until next time, hasta luego and goodbye.